Hello, Tell 702. So this is a response video for your M6 unpacks generally, and also a response to working with the COPs in real time that I got to do this over the last few days. So first, the M6 unpacks. Now, of course, this is to help you do the M6 imagines, but it's also your individual feedback for how you're piecing together, designing, doing coherence, crafting research questions and interventions that is specific to you. And that's going to help you when you go to your M7. You're going to look at all the unpacks too, to look at what specific feedback you got from instructors on maybe next steps or skills that you want to incorporate that you got to practice with your group. So in the impacts, one thing I saw done really, really well is that most of you did such a great job of incorporating critical theory into your designing. And that really speaks to how well you have worked with the content and one another and speaking about the content of the course and understanding the concepts of EESJ. And it's really clear in your unpacks. Second, I saw a lot of really, really smart reframings of the problem that were kind of outside the box, were never mentioned in the dissertation, but I can tell you might have been pulling them from your own experiences or things that you've seen in your field on the ground as professionals. And that's a really great way to reframe a problem, is to look at something completely different, not teachers or students, but something else that we could intervene in that might affect teachers and students. So that was really, I saw a lot of great reframing in that. Okay, so some of the things you want to remember as you move forward into your M6 Imagine, and then also carry on to your own M7 module, is you want to remember that this is practice for dissertation design. It's not cycle design. So you have to have an active intervention. An intervention is something that is part of your practice that you do. It could be something that you're ongoing doing that you want to study, or it could be something new you're going to try that you want to study. But it's not a research action. It is something you're doing in your practice. So, for example, doing a survey is a research action. It is not an action in your practice. So doing a survey is not an intervention. An intervention would involve the participants you normally work with in your practice, and you're doing something for some reason. You're changing something, or you're just investigating something that you always do, some action that's relevant to your practice. So it needs to have an actionable intervention. Now, a survey, interviews, all that kind of exploratory work is appropriate, and you've been practicing that in your cycles. But for your dissertation, you're supposed to use your cycle work and the literature to design whatever action you're going to take, or to look at your common actions that you're currently taking under a study. So make sure you're designing for a dissertation and that you have an intervention that is a practical action, not a research action. All right. So one of the clues here is many of your RQs were formed as what, why, or sometimes a yes or no question. There's two things there. Those usually indicate that you're asking something exploratory, like what's going on is the basics of the what. And why is this happening? That's the basics of the why. And the yes or no questions is this happening or does this happen? And those are simple yes or no. Those are all exploratory. Now, they're perfectly fine, probably, except for the yes or no, exploratory, an exploratory study, which yours is not. So usually, if you're asking those questions, those are excellent questions to ask of the literature and in your cycles. And then you use the literature and the cycles and the answers to those questions to design your action, the foundation of the design of your action. So if you're asking the what, why, and yes or no questions, first go out to the literature and see if there's some general answers about what you're asking. Then look at your cycle research, either for the cases, look within there, or just kind of assume or imagine. For your own POP, you have cycle research that you can fall back on. So your your questions should be more along the how, in what ways, how and to what extent, but definitely not yes or no. And steer clear of exploratory questions. If you see them, then you know that maybe you're doing an exploratory study. All right. Let's see. That's really the big tips on that. I saw a lot of good integration of intervention when the intervention was really well designed. I saw a lot of good integration of intervention to research question. Your intervention needs to be specific enough to show that there be data points to collect to answer questions that you're asking in the research questions, and it should be clear that they're connected. One thing that a few of you did that you want to watch is you asked questions far downstream of the intervention that you suggested. So you did an intervention where you designed something, that was the intervention. And then the questions were all about after you designed it and implemented it, and then what happened. So that's several steps far. And it's okay to do an entire research on how something's designed and and the design process and the changes and shifts that the design caused from what you were designing from. That's a perfectly good research study. You don't have to do the whole thing all the way out to we've changed everything in the school and students feel belonging now. There are several steps, and you kind of want to look at that process. So make sure that your research questions are not too far away from the intervention. It does show, though, that you're really thinking about a very broad work that probably couldn't be done in the time limits of this program, but could eventually be done in your own work after you're done. So it's good thinking. It's just when the design happens, you want to design it really tightly for your dissertation so you don't go too far. All right. So that's about it for the unpacks and where we're going with that and what I saw. The second response is to working with the COPs. And I am honored and I was so excited. And honestly, it was so much fun for me to get to work with you in your groups. And I want to say something about the process of research and how it's done practically and how it differs from what you do in your dissertation. So dissertation is a weird artifact and process in that you do it completely by yourself. There are a few big research projects that are done by yourself. Brene Brown actually is a grounded theorist. Grounded theorists often worked by themselves, but it's not really the norm. Almost all of my work that wasn't my dissertation and hasn't been my dissertation has been done in groups of about the size of your COP. And what's really nice about that is we're not all experts in every single thing. We bring expertise from different points of view. And you probably experienced this in your COP when you guys were working in either higher ed or K through 12. You could see that people who were in those spaces had some expertise that they could explain a few things that would be helpful to those who weren't in those spaces, but you still have great pedagogical ideas, curriculum ideas, theory ideas that can be pulled from either space into a project that applies to one. So that is actually what your experience in your COPs. And when I was working with you guys, it is very much like what real world research will feel like after you do your EDD and you become, Dr. Bowers or whoever, when you finally have, when you're finally on those teams, because a lot of research is done in teams, just like you were doing. And it was really excited to see you do that really naturally. And some of you brought some really great skills. And one thing that I do want to point out is in working with the online portion, we have an online class and we're doing some of the synchronous work. I saw a great use of asynchronous tools. A couple things that I saw many people used Slack to comment about ideas as they were working through, or WhatsApp. I saw that was being used to comment back and forth. Obviously, you guys were using Google Docs to do the collaborative writing comments and coming back and forth. But having those spaces, whatever they are, to communicate outside of and to prep for the actual synchronicity really seemed to speed up and make a great foundation for the discussions that you were having. And it was really amazing to be part of your process. And like I said, thank you so much. It was great fun for me. It's actually kind of what I like to do. That's my profession. And it was great to get to be in real time with you all. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing your imagines.